back to Cadence Podcast. I'm Katarina.
And I'm Michael. And welcome to episode number 3. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about I'm a shitty host.
Why I'm a shitty host.
Why I'm an amazing host.
Yeah.
This episode is really about hosting and your social battery in those situations and what it's like when you are in a relationship where one person is sort of more extroverted and is more comfortable with hosting and being around an abundance of people, and someone who isn't as much.
Yeah. Who isn't a natural host.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah, exactly.
In that way. But before we get into that, let's talk about this week's The New Cadence. And this week it's my turn.
Yep.
And I read something really interesting the other day, and it's about, when you're flying and you're flying for 9 hours and all you can afford is economy. So it's super uncomfortable. You're just sitting there. There's no space. You're trying to sleep and it's just so tight, and you're envying all these people that are in business class.
Okay.
So apparently Air New Zealand is
This is recent?
Recent.
Okay, yeah.
But I think they just won like an award, a design award for this or something.
Wow. Okay, well, I mean, yeah, it's the new cadence. So this is new topics.
Always new topics.
Yeah.
I read it this week, yeah. Air New Zealand is introducing something called Skynest. So in their economy cabin, they have found a very unique and innovative way to make it possible for passengers to have a sleep cabin, but them being able to maximize the space in a way that it doesn't take away from the amount of passengers that they can fit into a cabin.
In like the economy section.
Yes. And right now it's sort of a pilot project where I think there's a certain limited amount of planes or even sections in the airplane where they're testing it out.
Is the plane called Skynest?
No, I think the pods are called Skynest.
Okay.
And
the prices are the same as economy.
That they didn't get into, but it's more that I'm guessing, or it's probably like an economy plus sort of situation.
Okay.
But the interesting fact was that they have found a way to do it in a way where they can fit the same amount of passengers into the plane. And you can comfortably lay in a pod. You know those like Japanese sleeping pod hotels? It looks
So basically you take a regular plane.
Yeah.
You have your first class or business class, which is super spacious and all that. And then you have your economy class. And they've found a way to not lose any seats in the economy class of that type of plane.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, hey, because for me, I would probably play a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because we don't have that kind of budget to be flying business or first class. So.
And I was lucky. I got upgraded one time, and it was able to fly business on a flight from Amsterdam to Calgary.
Yeah.
And I have never exited a plane that rejuvenated and rested. It is like a day and night sort of experience.
And that's a tough situation because if you think about it, thousands upon thousands of people fly every single day, and beyond just the physical act of flying, the whole travel process can be like tiring and frustrating, just the whole checking in and security and all that. So, I mean, and it's interesting, like the travel industry has evolved, but and the planes have evolved, and the way you can check in online, and the digital tickets and the apps have evolved, but the act of being in a plane itself hasn't really evolved.
No, it's like a can of sardines.
I mean, if anything, it's de-evolved. Like planes used to have all these amazing entertainment systems that you could and now they just don't even install those at all because everybody has phones. So they're like, screw it.
They make you pay for every little thing.
Yeah, I mean,
every little piece of.
That's a whole other thing. But I mean, let's hope that eventually, it's
maybe that might become a thing. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe new thing. But
maybe our kids in the future will be like, you did what? You were sitting in
regular seats.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? But that's cool news. I hope that becomes something that in the future we can talk about deeper into and is a normal
try
thing.
out.
Yeah. But to move on to today's episode about hosting, or rather being a shitty host, how did we even come up with this topic?
We were sitting at the table having lunch or something, and we were talking about...
Yeah, I think we were like having lunch or dinner, and we were talking about how I have an ability to just sort of put everything down when at the dinner table.
Yes.
And just sort of understand what people may or may not need without even thinking about it.
It was about me setting the table for dinner, and I had forgotten something, I think. And when we then were kind of analyzing why that was happening, and me at some point I just said, I'm a shitty host.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we came up with this whole idea.
Yeah, and shitty host doesn't like mean like shitty host per se. It's just a kind of a funny title that we wanted to play on. But it's more about how someone and how two different people and how our brains work, in that for me, even if I don't need a knife, I put down a knife if it's a meal that requires a knife. Even if I personally won't be using it, someone else might.
I would never be using a knife with this meal, so I'm not putting a knife down.
And even if it's not a knife-based meal, you would put that down. And we're talking about food in specific, but it can be with a lot of different things. It can be about hosting like sort of a party or an event, or maybe you're wanting to showcase your film, planning like a party of some sort.
Or just having friends over, like even in a casual way.
Yeah, and you have Katarina always says like, I fear hosting. I fear inviting people over.
And even when it is a friend coming over for a casual hangout evening,
even if it's one-on-one,
like it's worse when it's more people, but even if it's one-on-one or more, like even when my mom comes over or something, I have always been more comfortable being in other people's spaces than my own with people.
Why is that though?
The only way that I can think of explaining it is I am a chameleon. I can adapt to any sort of environment. I'm comfortable in any environment that is presented to me, and I am so easy to please. So as long as you give me something to sit on and an opportunity to talk to you, I'm happy. And I think I expect other people to need more. And that because I am so easy, I think I fear that I can't read what the other person needs as much.
Okay,
so I go like above and beyond by 5 miles to make them comfortable, but that makes me uncomfortable.
Or not enough.
Or not enough.
Yeah, like
there is no middle.
Yeah, I see it because you don't
need
need so much. You have this anxiety of providing too much or not enough. Yeah, and I don't see it that way at all. Like it's not about providing too much or not enough. It's like it's more of like, this is what I'm so easygoing. This is what I need, but in this circumstances, here are all the options. I'm just going to provide that because they may need that, and even if I don't need it, then it's all good. I feel like for me, it's more about like just having it there and not needing it, rather than not having it and needing it.
I agree. And then I guess in a setting up the table sort of situation, I think I go more the less is more way. But then how do you feel when you invite people over and you want to provide them with, like, let's use a casual sense, like snacks and drinks? Do you try to envision what they could possibly want?
Absolutely not. Okay, no, no, because everyone's preferences are different, and it's like, okay, in that sense, I can see where you get some anxious anxiety because in a sense of having dinner, it's like, okay, I put down a fork, I put down a knife, even if they don't need the knife, all good. I put down a plate or a glass, but like when it's like having friends over and it's like a spread of snacks or charcuterie or whatever, it's like how much is enough, how much isn't enough.
And how many options should I have? And
Yeah,
like,
yeah, I totally get it because like if you invite friends over and you have just one bowl of chips, for you that might be enough, but then you're like, is that enough for them?
do they want sweet? Do they want savory? Are they watching their weight?
Yeah,
Do they
yeah,
want
yeah, yeah,
fruit? Like,
exactly.
do they want this,
So
that? Like,
so for me, that's what I'm saying is like how I would approach a situation like that is that okay, I know that I don't just eat this one type of chip.
yeah.
I know that my preference says that I would eat maybe let's just say regular chips, a tortilla nacho style chip, and then like a seasoned spice, whether it be salt and vinegar or spicy or whatever type of chip. Those are the chips that I enjoy.
Mhm.
Okay. So, and then I know that I like this specific type of candy, this like three different specific types of candy. So, how I operate is I buy those things knowing that I enjoy them,
Mhm.
but I put a little bit of each of those things out because the guests, let's say they don't want to eat all of that or chocolate or a tortilla chip, they just want the regular chip. At least after they've left, all the things that I had already purchased, I enjoy and I will eventually eat it. Rather than going to the store just buying the one chip and the one chocolate and then not having enough.
And are you ever afraid that the options that you have selected aren't at all what they want?
No, because I don't care.
And that's where I care too much. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, they're not eating anything. I must have bought the wrong stuff.
And that's not it at all. Because I think that humans are actually way more simple.
Hmm.
Because if you really look at it, it's like you give them a tortilla chip, you give them a regular chip, which who in the right mind doesn't like a regular
Yeah.
chip, just like a salted potato chip? And then you give them like a seasoned chip. And you're not gonna, depending on who the audience is, you're not gonna buy like extra spicy or extra crazy. You might just buy like all dressed.
Hmm.
Or as as Canadians, ketchup chips.
Yeah.
We love ketchup chips. And if you're watching this or listening to this and you're not Canadian, ketchup chips are bomb.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
I miss
So
them. We found them in Portugal. They don't have them here.
in
But
Germany, but or you buy just like an all dressed chip or something like that. And so for me, it's like, no, absolutely not. And that's why it's like you see those like stupid fruit or no, those veggie all-in-one platters. What's in those things? It's usually cherry tomatoes,
Mhm.
baby carrots, and
Celery.
sliced celery. Who the f likes any of those things? But you throw everybody in a little party situation, and eventually this guy's gonna walk over and start dipping the celery into the ranch dip. Like nobody, I ain't gonna. I don't go and buy ranch dip and celery to dip in my own home situation, but I'm just like, yeah. It, and it's like you're providing maybe a little different of an experience for them. So sometimes it's fun for them. And I think for me, I just never care. I just know that one option probably isn't going to be enough, and 10 options probably going to be too much. So for me, I'm always like, here's three. I like those three. Here's three savory options. Here's three sweet options. That's enough. And my basis is I just got to make sure that in the end, it's not going to be wasted. Like I would never buy
Yeah.
something that I wouldn't enjoy after the fact and just have it wasted. I wouldn't just buy something to impress somebody,
Yeah.
you know?
So getting like putting that all into perspective, what do you think? Where does that come from that someone's naturally inclined to feel comfortable with hosting and
Mm.
someone else being less comfortable with it?
I think it comes from the fact that I enjoy having in a group setting, I think when there's lots of people, it's the most awkward when there isn't a lot of conversation
Mm-hmm.
or a lot of energy, if you will. And I feel like when you're hosting people and you want to keep the conversations going, there needs to be sort of things to talk about or things that provide action.
Mm-hmm.
So one chip over time, if people just grabbing the same thing starts to get sort of boring.
Mm-hmm.
But then you start to provide some different options and there's different things happening, or you pour the first drink and then after that you're like, hey everybody, I found something new. Do you want to try this? And it reignites that, and then it keeps sort of the conversations flowing. It's like, hey, where did you find that? Or hey, have you heard of this thing before? Have you ever tried that?
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of keeps those things going. And I think for you, why you fear hosting is that awkwardness. You kind of like are kind of like, ooh, what if they don't like this? What if there's nothing to talk about? What if we're all sitting here in sort of in silence? And so
Yeah, and what, like, it's interesting, while you were speaking, the word rejection came to my mind.
yeah.
So the other day we were invited over to a friend's house, and we brought a aperitivo, sort of something we had never tried before. And
it's interesting. Yeah, we had never tried it, but how I came to that conclusion was I really wanted to try it.
And when I bring something to someone, especially something I think that I haven't tried before,
your anxiety is through the roof.
It is through the roof because I am fearing that that drink, and in turn me, is being rejected.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. And just to give you everyone context, it was Ramazzotti, which is normally like a licorice style drink, but this one was actually more of their light aperitivo drink. It was like hibiscus and like orange and like very bright, and you would mix it with a bit of tonic water, and it was like this fizzy pre-dinner drink with lime. So it's very refreshing,
very delicious,
like a lemon,
and everybody
hibiscus.
Loved it.
Yeah. So for me, when you saw that bottle and you knew that I was buying it, did you know that you would enjoy it?
Yes.
And that's all that matters. And here's the reason. When you know that you can enjoy it, you can then speak about your excitement about it and why you think it's amazing and you're passionate about it. Whether they like it or not, that's not the point. The point is that it creates conversation.
Interesting.
And that conversation creates energy. And that energy leads somewhere. It leads to, sometimes in a friend setting, usually it's a debate, hopefully not an argument, but like it's a debate, and like it creates that energy, and then they can grab a different drink, and they can, and then see what I mean? It's like, if I pour that drink and you and I know that we like it, and they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Where did you find this? You start a conversation. And let's say I pour it and you and I like it, and I pour it for them and they don't like it. And they're like, oh, that's terrible. Well, why is it terrible? What drink do you like? And then I get to try that drink, right? So it doesn't matter whether someone likes something or whether someone dislikes something. For me, it's about the conversation of why. And why do I like that? Why do you like that? Oh, let me try what you like. Let's see if I like that too. And it's like, it's about trying to connect. It doesn't mean that we have to like hit the nail on the head, but it's about just the understanding of an experience.
Yeah.
And that to me is it, right? Because you knew that you would like it. I knew that I would like it. They all ended up loving it.
Yeah.
But even if they didn't love it, I'd be like, well, what do you guys like? So that I can go through that experience with them. Have you ever hosted anything that hasn't ever turned out? Because you always say like, I'm not a very good host. So, but you obviously have hosted friends or people before. So have there ever been a situation that you've hosted something that at the end of it, you're just like, man, or it was horrible?
No.
And there you go.
But it's always been, I have never been able to enjoy myself. I do not enjoy myself when I'm hosting because I am so focused on making sure that everyone is so comfortable that I can't relax.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. For me, it's the prep beforehand where I get a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm a good host and I put in a lot of effort into making it good. And so I know people are generally going to walk away with a good experience,
Mm.
but that requires a lot of like prep on my end.
Yeah.
Like I used to host always big dinners, like big 10-person dinners, and come up with like a whole like 6-dish menu or even
Mhm.
like a 5-course meal. And that just requires a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I get so much like satisfaction from people's enjoyment out of it because for me the that energy and that experience that everyone is vibing together sort of fuels me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
You know what's interesting too on the whole topic of hosting? And again, because I love reading and bringing in like things that other people have thought about and not just my own experience.
yeah.
Um, when you host a gathering,
Yeah.
does the question we as humans often dive into the what and how when it comes to hosting? It's like, what do I need? What are we doing? And like the how am I executing this?
Mm-hmm.
And how is the evening going to go?
Yeah.
Is the question of why often very apparent in your head of why you're hosting?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because generally for me it's like I'm hosting a dinner because let's say it's Thanksgiving.
Mm.
That's an easy one. But the why is more of like bringing together a group of people for a game night because I want us to feel tighter as a group.
Yeah.
And to have relationships that aren't just so surface level.
Yeah.
So there are certain times where I'm just like, hey, I need to like host this in my environment so that we have more time to be able to just have longer, more in-depth conversations rather than just going to a bar.
Yeah.
And you're having typically not super deep conversations.
Yeah.
Because I think the people that we surround ourselves with have really interesting ideas and really unique perspectives. And in order to really pull that out of people, you need to host them in your own home or they need to be able to host you.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to get those at the club.
And I think you might be, I don't know if you are unique in that way that you think about the why so much, but there's a book called The Art of Gathering, which I've read.
Yeah. That's such a popular book.
Yeah.
Which again, I'm a terrible reader, so I've never read it before.
Yeah, and it's by her name is Priya Parker, and it's really interesting because she talks specifically about the why we gather, because a lot of people often dive into what I've said is the what and the how.
What type of party? How am I going to execute it?
And especially with things like Christmas, Easter, weddings, those things that are naturally just an event where we lean towards celebrating and hosting, but we don't actually think about why we come together for one of those specific events.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, when you actually start diving into why you're doing something and why you're hosting people, the whole dynamic of how you're approaching planning that evening changes because, like you said, you're not hosting because you have nothing else to do. You're hosting because you have a specific objective, and then you plan that entire evening around that. So how, with that example that you used, how do you foster that connection and how do you get something out of people? It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, because for me, it's like I need the energy of people living and my surroundings to be alive in that's how my battery gets fueled. So having I surround myself with very like we've talked before, lots of like people who've worked in hospitality or other creatives, and that's what they do in their everyday life sort of inspires me to do that. And that's interesting because for me, I've never had a problem hosting or being hosted because everyone in my circle has at some point sort of been in a hospitality type of job. And so they understand it really, really well. And what's interesting is I don't know that any of your friends, your close friends, we're talking like our tight-knit core group of people, have ever worked in hospitality or restaurants. Have they? out of like your 5 or 6 close knit friends?
No, not that. Not yeah. No, no.
They've been maybe in retail or whatever, but and that's funny. All of mine have.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that interesting, unique perspective that all my friends are not uncomfortable hosting at all. Some of them are better than others at it.
Yeah.
Like you said, some people will just, provide 1 or 2 options and it's a fun night and they're great. And then some people provide this spread that is like you're at like the Met Gala or something like that. It's just like, whoa, this is ridiculous. And I think at the end of the day, that is really not what matters at all. It's whether you're bringing like one thing to the table or one drink or 10 or 15 or 30. It's more about the ability to have the conversations about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier to do that when you bring a board game or a couple board games or a couple chip options or a couple chocolate options or a couple drink options, because then you can start with 1 or 2 and then it can lead into the next thing and then lead into the next thing, and that's what makes it interesting. But I also talked a little bit about why I like to host, and for me it's a little bit different than you, because when I host, it actually fuels my battery a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
To a degree, but for you, it actually just drains it. It sort of continuously drains it. And we talked about this in the last episode, how you're more like you start at 100 and you slowly reduce, and I'm like this rechargeable battery where it's like constantly up and down, up and down, up and down. But that sort of leads us into, what is your social battery? Like everyone has a social battery.
Mm-hmm.
How much they can tolerate hanging out with people. And I'm not talking about just for a single evening.
Yeah.
I'm talking about through the course of days or weeks or months. And we're different because I'm an extrovert, so I can be around lots of people almost all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you're not necessarily an introvert.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like you know those personality tests?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know really off the top of my head what my letters are.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what yours are?
So in the Myers-Briggs personality test, I'm an INTJ, and the I in it stands for introverted.
Yeah.
And I think you've never formally done the test.
I have.
And you are an ENFP.
ENFP, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which
that sounds I definitely am an ENF something or whatever that is.
Yes.
P,
yeah. Yeah. Which stands for extroverted, intuitive, feeling, perceiving.
Yeah.
And I am introverted, intuitive, thinking, judging.
Yeah. She's a judger, guys.
I'm a judger. And then there's also the Enneagram. I don't know if you've heard of the Enneagram before, but it's like Enneagram is a very complex sort of personality type test. Mm-hmm. And without going into detail too much, it's less about putting someone into a box, but it's more about raising awareness of where you are now and showing you the potential of where you could progress to. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And especially the Enneagram talks about the social battery. Mm-hmm. I'm an Enneagram 5, which is typically an introvert, someone who keeps their sort of resources to themselves, and they're easily depleted by being around people and having to exert energy in a people sort of way.
Yeah, interesting.
Which, yeah, it all kind of sort of falls into the same category.
Yeah, and I will say this, I think as someone who like people would call an extrovert, people call me an extrovert all the time. I sometimes like have to correct them. Mm-hmm. I'm an extrovert introvert. Mm-hmm.
You're an introverted extrovert.
I'm an introverted extrovert. Yeah.
You're an extrovert at the core with introverted tendencies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you are naturally fueled by people.
I'm naturally fueled by people, and when people are around, I can turn it on just like you can.
Yes.
But I can turn it on in a different way, and I can sustain that for a long period of time.
And it does give you something. It's not that you have to force it.
It does.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily force it either. In certain situations, you do.
It just causes me, like, it depletes me more
quicker. Yeah. But I do, after either a long period of those or multiple days or a week or whatever, I do need a lot of just nothingness.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I exert so much energy.
Yeah.
And sort of, because as we just talked about, I like to have these conversations, these back and forth.
Yeah.
Pardon me, about why you like that or why I don't like that and why we both like that. But then I do need a lot of just like quiet time.
Mm-hmm.
And quiet time doesn't always mean alone time.
Yeah.
Because for introverts especially, they need alone time.
I need alone time.
Whereas I just need quiet time.
Yeah.
Like I can be around other people, but they just can't, like, I just need to be in my own space to be like working. So let's say I can be in a coffee shop, but I need my headphones in and just, I need to be doing my own thing. And I can observe, but I just don't want to have to like engage.
And I think also the whole topic of knowing your social battery isn't only about, I only have this much energy, so I can only be around people for this certain amount of time. It's also like, especially as an introvert, I think society often applauds extroverts more than they do introverts, because in meetings, they're the ones that speak more. In school, they were the ones that would raise their hand more and would contribute more, which often would be awarded more. Yeah. So when you grow up as an introvert, speaking from my own experience, you sometimes ask yourself if something's wrong with you, because you're not the one that makes friends so quickly or meets new people or all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And coming back to the topic of hosting and being around people, I have also just become comfortable being the quiet one in a hosting situation. Like, I can be in a room
and judge.
And judge. Be in a room with 8 people and they're just having this loud conversation. And back in the day, I would just like be on my toes the entire time to try to figure out what I can contribute to the situation.
But now you feel you don't need to.
I've just become comfortable listening.
And you know what's interesting about that is you were talking about how the extroverts get awarded and they're often acknowledged the most. I actually experienced the opposite.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I was often called too loud.
Yeah.
That can happen too. They're like, oh, he's always talking. He's always too loud. And the difference was I was just excited.
Yeah.
I was just excited. Like as a kid, you're just excited to be a part of something. And they're just like, you can be too loud. Or now what I've noticed is because I've got much more comfortable in sort of with who I am in my own skin and my own ability to know myself and how I'm capable of doing things. Oftentimes, like you said, in creative meetings, I'm very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And there's someone who's just like spitting out all these crazy ideas. And I'm talking from my work personally, but like sometimes in these creative meetings, people are just like throwing out like a million things. And I'm just sitting there actually just processing.
Yeah.
In a very creative way. I'm just like thinking about what people are saying, what people are doing. And then usually I will say something once I have like this sort of flushed out creative idea. And you know, like sort of in the creative meetings, and you've been in this, I'm sure, and I'm sure people listening and people watching here know the same thing. It's like throw 1,000 things to the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy operating in that way. That's not my style of being creative. I do understand that statement where you have to like say a bunch of stuff and try to see what comes out of it. But for me, it's not about like throwing things at the wall and see what sticks. For me, it's about having sort of thoughts and ideas about what the photo or campaign or film can look like and what we are trying to accomplish. What is the start of the story? What's the end of the story? And then we kind of just flush it out a bit more creatively rather than chaotically.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know, that's actually kind of cool.
And it's
Be
also
more creative rather than chaotic. And sometimes, like in these creative meetings, there's ones that are just so inspirationally creative. Everything that people are saying are being said with much more intention. And then there's certain creative meetings where it's just chaos.
And you know what's interesting too? It's like, I think what I always struggle with the most, and now we're talking about meetings, but being in a meeting and being quiet, people thinking I'm dumb and that I don't have to contribute something. And I think that could have sort of an extrovert could relate to that too, but in a very different way. Of like, an extrovert sometimes just blurbs out ideas without thinking about them before, and that can also make them sound dumb. So it's just like, I think
no, trust me, I've been in a situation. I think we were having like we were working on a concept, and we were working on this I think it was like a video project that was actually completed, and we were looking to tweak it a little bit. And the thing is, with the idea, whether they thought it was good or not, or the sort of the end product, it was executed exactly to the storyboard, right? I didn't come up with the storyboard. I didn't come up with the concept, but I kind of gave input on how it could be best executed from a director and filmmaker's perspective. The storyboard was given to me by the marketing team that was creating this campaign.
Yeah.
And one of the people who were the creative directors wasn't a part of any of the pre-production meetings or anything. They were just a part of this sort of post-production input meeting.
Oh, I know which one you're
so they weren't there for the storyboard process or they weren't even on set or any of that stuff. So when we were watching it back and sort of going through some of the tweaks that could be made, because at the end of the day, without reshooting things, because there was no budget there to reshoot, you could only tweak so much based off of what you shot, based off of the storyboard. It was a very tight shoot, so we had exact shots that we wanted to get, and they were just, I don't know if they're like a, like a I don't know what they call them, but like a backseat driver, whatever those terms are, or like a keyboard warrior, whatever that is. But like, yeah, they must have read a lot of books about how cameras work, or filmmaking in general, but had never even touched a camera or even made a movie or even edited one at all. And they're just spitting out all these like technical terms of like, you should do this and have this range, and that shot looks like you'd shot it like this, and you should have shot it like this. And I was like, actually, that's exactly how we shot it, exactly how you're describing it. It's just, like, sometimes when people speak too much because they're just blurting out everything that they think they know, they just look dumb.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
So sometimes the quiet people look dumb, but they're actually the smartest ones because they're just sort of analyzing.
And they're only saying something when they really feel like they can.
They're only saying something when it's going to hit.
Now that we've sort of gone away from hosting in like a gathering, like a private sense.
We've kind of gone into like this like work sense and like.
But it applies there too, because again, like Priya Parker in her book also talks about, like, especially with meetings, you should ask yourself why you're hosting a meeting, because a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
And I think me being uncomfortable hosting also applies to meetings. Like, I am an uncomfortable leader in a meeting when I don't have a plan. Like, when I have a sort of just like
and is that why you're uncomfortable hosting like a private night, because there really is no plan? You're kind of just inviting people and whatever happens.
Yes. I am. Yes, that is exactly it. Like, when I have a weekly catch-up meeting with my teammates or my daily meeting with my team, I am so much more uncomfortable with people that I talk to every day. Like, they're in my corner, we're a team. I am more uncomfortable in that sense than when I am hosting a workshop
and you
for
don't know
a
anyone,
client, and I don't know anyone, but I have planned that for weeks.
And it's
like,
to a T.
It's just like to a T.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's like anything, and and that just says like who you are. Like for me, it's funny because I've talked to a lot of creative filmmaker friends or photographer friends. Sometimes you go into it with a plan and it's bang on, and you get every shot you need. It's perfect. And sometimes we go in with no plan, and it's just as good. It's a little, it is a little more chaotic, but sometimes you get some creativity out of it that is just like exciting. You know, it like sort of breaks down that boundary. But sort of getting back to our battery a little bit, it's like anytime you have to do these sort of, whether it's like home hosting or workshops or meetings, it's like you just exert energy, whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, because you're exerting energy trying to break out of being an introvert, or just reserving yourself. That takes sort of some sort
energy
of
too.
energy,
Yeah,
like and then the other way.
You're going against your natural instincts.
Yeah. Not everyone loves hosting, but everyone loves being hosted.
Yes.
And I feel like that's so interesting because like whether you're invited to someone's house for dinner, or invited to an event, or going to a, like, because if you think about it, when you make a reservation at a restaurant or you go to a restaurant, you decide to go to a restaurant, you're being hosted by that restaurant.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, do you know anyone who doesn't like going to restaurants? I'm sure some people may not.
I don't know anyone personally, but I am noticing in the social media space and like a lot of Gen Z creators that I follow or I've watched their story, who are so much, they are very vocal about being comfortable just being in their own space and being homebodies. And I think that speaks against loving to be hosted, because that might also put some people outside of their comfort zone in a way of being in other people's spaces, not knowing their way around, not knowing.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
And maybe that's just more prevalent because it's being talked about more or whatever. But I think being the homebody thing, especially for a lot of the people that I know, have always been around. I know so many people who are like, I'm a homebody. I'm a homebody. I don't mind being a homebody. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I think a lot of people, I think everyone can enjoy being hosted much, much more. Yeah. Because, I mean, when you go out and you see people having dinner at a restaurant, to me, anyways, most times, everyone's having a great time. Yeah. You know? Because they're in the company of someone they want to be in the company with, hopefully, if they're not having a couple's quarrel or something like that.
Or first date that's going wrong.
Yeah, I guess so. But I don't know, there's this like I think the thought of hosting always takes me back to the idea that I love the energy of seeing people enjoy themselves at restaurants. And oftentimes when you're like walking the streets of Berlin, you see everyone on the streets on the patios having a drink, or in Europe in general. Like here is it, being on this side of the world is very special. Yeah. Because in Canada, when you're walking the streets, yeah, like there's tons of patios and stuff, but like I don't know, like in the States too, I guess, but like especially in Canada, everyone's like quarantined in these like little fenced off patios.
And here it's like
just in Europe in general, everything's like just flooded onto the streets.
Vomited out onto the streets. Yeah, like every corner, any
space available. Like yeah, I remember the very first time I ever was in Europe, which was in Barcelona. I went to go have dinner at this restaurant, and he's like, "Would you like to sit inside or outside?" And it's just a quick story, but I was like, "Outside, please." And I was actually traveling alone at the time in this one area, and he's like, "Yeah, just pick any table over there." And it was literally like the street split into a Y. There was like this little area, grassy area, right in the middle where the street split, and then the restaurant. Oh, there goes our light. Yeah, our light just died, so that's telling us we have to wrap up soon. But it just like, just he crossed the street, and then boom, right there was the patio, and it was just so interesting. And the thing is, that little island in the middle there had like multiple patios of different restaurants that were kind of, the servers were kind of crossing into it. Like for all the people listening, it was like just a little the road was split into a Y. There was like this little section in the center, if you can imagine that was just like sort of sidewalk, and there were restaurants on each side of the Y, and there were servers crossing the streets to go and like serve the tables in the middle there.
Same idea in Amsterdam on the bridges. They like you have to leave the restaurant has a patio, but then you have to cross the road
cross the street onto the bridge, and the bridge no longer was available for cars because it was filled with tables.
Yeah, and like it's the same idea of like you really have to see like what do these chairs look like? Like which restaurant
totally
belong to make
because
sure that
all the tables and chairs are just sitting on the bridge.
Yeah.
And you have to look at sort of the menus and whether the chairs are whatever colors the chairs are, and if they all match the sort of the ones on the restaurant, then you know that's that restaurant, because you could be sitting on that bridge wanting food from this other restaurant, but then
you're
it's mixed up and you're in the wrong spot, but they're all mixed together.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I think hosting as a whole is something that I think is important, because bringing people together to be able to share different perspectives and ideas, whether we like the same things or dislike another, it's more about understanding. And I think that's why, to me, I enjoy hosting, but I also not just enjoy, I find it important.
Yeah, and it's that whole idea, and you've opened up my mind in that way too. It's like it's not about agreeing on one thing. It's about that discussion about why someone enjoys something or doesn't enjoy something, or open.
And it's not about good or bad. It's just about that open dialogue about perspective. Yeah. But I think we'll leave it there. We hope that the topics today were informative to a degree.
Yeah, and if they we're always excited about like
having more conversations in regards to that.
Yeah.
If you know of the book that Katerina talked about, let us know. If you're watching or listening to this in a place where you can leave a comment, definitely do that. Share, like, rate 5 stars.
Subscribe, follow, whatever the platform that you're listening or watching this on like allows you to.
Yeah, and we haven't talked about it too much, but follow us on Instagram, follow us on the TikTok, oh my God, the TikTok, terrible, I apologize. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify
podcasts,
all that. And yeah, we'll wrap it up here. We're happy to have hosted you today.
In our little space here.
And we hope to see you in the next episode of Cadence Podcast.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.